Most people today believe they are thinking clearly, but in truth, their minds are tangled in noise. They worry about what others say, they chase after things that do not matter, and they confuse opinions for facts. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of Rome, lived under greater pressure than almost anyone: wars on the borders, betrayal inside his court, sickness and death in his family. Yet through it all, he kept a calm, steady mind. How? He trained himself to think with clarity, cutting through confusion like a blade. The question is, can we learn to do the same? Marcus Aurelius begins with a lesson that seems simple but is often forgotten. Do not waste your mind on what you cannot control. Clear thinking starts by sorting life into two categories: what belongs to you and what does not. Your choices, your actions, your judgments, these are yours. The weather, the economy, the gossip of others, these are not. When the emperor faced plague sweeping through Rome, he could not stop the disease, but he could decide how to act in the midst of it, with compassion, with duty, with steadiness. How often do we cloud our own thoughts by trying to wrestle with the uncontrollable? You cannot control if someone insults you, but you can control whether you let the insult settle in your heart. You cannot control the storms of the world, but you can control the helm of your ship. When you remember this distinction, your mind clears. You stop chasing the impossible and instead focus your strength on what is truly yours to shape. This is not just philosophy, it is mental discipline. Ask yourself in moments of stress, is this within my power or outside it? The clarity of your thinking begins with the honesty of your answer. Another lesson from Marcus Aurelius is to question the first impression. He reminds us that things are rarely as they appear. What seems terrible at first glance may not be terrible at all. It may simply be unexpected. A delay is not a disaster, an insult is not a wound, and a loss is not always a curse. The mind has the power to decide what any event means. Marcus would look at a broken object and say, "It was always fragile. Its breaking is not shocking. It is in its nature." This way of thinking clears away confusion because it strips events of unnecessary drama. How many times do we let anger, fear, or worry take root because we never stop to ask, is this really harmful? Or is it just uncomfortable? Clear thinking demands that we slow down and question the story our emotions tell us. Imagine walking into a storm. You can say, "The world is against me," or you can say, "It is raining, that is all." The storm has not changed, but your clarity has. Marcus urges us to see the raw facts before the coloring of judgment. When you discipline your mind in this way, you will find fewer enemies, fewer crises, and fewer reasons to lose peace. The world becomes less frightening because you begin to see it as it truly is, not as your fear would paint it. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about the power of controlling our inner dialogue. He believed that most suffering comes not from what happens, but from the way we talk to ourselves about it. If you call something unbearable, it will feel unbearable. If you remind yourself that you are strong enough to face it, the same event becomes lighter. The words we repeat in our minds shape the world we live in. Clear thinking begins with clear language, especially the language you use with yourself. Instead of saying, "This is the worst thing ever," you might say, "This is difficult, but it is within my strength." Instead of saying, "Why me?" you might say, "Why not me?" I am no different from others who endure hardship. By changing the conversation in your head, you strip away unnecessary despair and open space for reason. Imagine two men given the same heavy load. One groans and curses with each step, while the other silently accepts and simply carries it. The weight is the same, but one has doubled his suffering with words, while the other has cut his burden in half. Marcus would urge us to be careful gardeners of our inner speech. Do not let weeds of exaggeration, self-pity, or rage grow there. Speak to yourself with calm truth, and you will think with greater clarity. Over time, this practice builds an inner fortress where your mind cannot be easily shaken by the noise of life. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of examining our judgments before accepting them as truth. Our minds are quick to label events as good or bad, but often these labels are hasty and unhelpful. A storm ruins your picnic, and instantly you think, "This is terrible." But is it truly terrible, or is it simply inconvenient? By pausing and questioning our initial judgments, we create a space for reason to act. He urged us to separate events from our opinions about them. The same event can be an opportunity or a disaster, depending on how we interpret it. When someone insults you, the insult itself is neutral. Only your acceptance of its meaning gives it power. Marcus taught that we must first master our ability to perceive accurately before we can respond effectively. Misjudgments lead to emotional chaos, rash decisions, and wasted energy. Consider a general who assumes an enemy's troop movement signals an immediate attack, when in reality it is a routine exercise. Acting on that false judgment could lead to disaster. Similarly, in everyday life, our assumptions about people's intentions, the outcome of events, or even our own abilities can cloud clear thinking. By checking our assumptions by asking, "Is this truly as it seems?" we prevent small errors from growing into significant problems. Clear thinking begins with a disciplined mind that questions first, reacts second, and never confuses opinion with fact. Marcus Aurelius believed that to think clearly, we must understand the limits of our knowledge. We often speak and act as if we know everything, yet most of our certainty is built on assumptions, hearsay, or incomplete information. He urged us to remain humble, recognizing that our understanding is partial and that the world operates in ways beyond our control. This humility is not weakness. It is a form of mental strength because it keeps us from being deceived by overconfidence. When facing a decision, ask yourself, what do I truly know, and what am I guessing? Often the line between knowledge and opinion is blurred, and ignoring this distinction leads to mistakes. Marcus suggested a daily practice of reflection, reviewing the day's events, identifying where assumptions were made, and separating facts from interpretations. This habit trains the mind to spot errors and prevents them from accumulating. It also cultivates patience. We no longer feel the need to rush to judgment or force certainty where there is none. In practical terms, clear thinking requires us to slow down, seek evidence, and resist the urge to leap to conclusions. In relationships, work, and even personal growth, acknowledging what we don't know allows us to make wiser choices. By embracing the boundaries of our knowledge, we protect our minds from confusion, manipulation, and the false pride that comes from thinking we are more certain than reality allows. Clear thinking grows from this steady, humble awareness of what is truly known. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of distinguishing between what is within our control and what is not. Much of human anxiety comes from trying to control the uncontrollable. Other people's opinions, the outcome of events, or the twists of fate. Clear thinking begins when we accept reality as it is, rather than as we wish it to be. Ask yourself, is this under my control, or am I chasing shadows? When you focus only on what you can influence, your thoughts, your actions, your choices, you conserve energy and avoid unnecessary frustration. This is not resignation, it is clarity. In practice, this might mean approaching a conflict calmly, rather than trying to manipulate someone else's feelings or working diligently on a project while accepting that the final outcome depends on variables you cannot dictate. Marcus illustrated this with the metaphor of a ship at sea. You cannot command the wind, but you can adjust the sails. Similarly, we cannot control external events, but we can steer our responses. By constantly asking ourselves where our power truly lies, we cultivate a mind that sees situations clearly, without distortion from desire, fear, or attachment. This perspective makes decisions easier and life less chaotic because we stop struggling against what cannot be changed and devote ourselves fully to what can. Mastery of this distinction is a cornerstone of mental clarity, allowing us to act decisively where it matters and let go where it does not. Another key lesson Marcus Aurelius teaches is the value of examining our assumptions before reacting. Much of human error comes from accepting thoughts and impressions at face value, without questioning their truth or relevance. When someone criticizes you, do you immediately feel anger or shame, or do you pause and ask, is this truly about me, or is it a reflection of their own struggle? Clear thinking requires this pause. It is the ability to separate perception from reality, to identify biases that cloud judgment. Marcus often reminded himself that people act according to their understanding and nature, not to deliberately harm. Recognizing this helps you respond with reason instead of impulse. Another practical application is in decision-making. Rather than reacting to every opinion, rumor, or emotion, take a moment to examine evidence, consider alternative explanations, and weigh consequences calmly. This approach prevents wasted energy and poor choices born from haste or pride. Think of it as maintaining a mental shield. Your mind does not absorb every disturbance. It filters what is meaningful and true. By consistently questioning assumptions and seeking clarity before acting, you create space for thoughtful, deliberate decisions. This is not overthinking. It is disciplined thinking, a habit that Marcus considered essential to a life of reason. Over time, this practice trains the mind to see patterns, avoid errors, and act in accordance with both virtue and reality. Another essential lesson is the importance of distinguishing between what is within your control and what is not. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that external events, other people's opinions, and circumstances cannot be controlled, but your judgments, choices, and actions can. When you become entangled in things beyond your control, you waste energy, create unnecessary stress, and lose sight of reason. Instead, focus on what you can influence, your attitude, effort, and integrity. For example, you cannot control if someone speaks ill of you, but you can control whether you respond with anger, indifference, or measured reasoning. Similarly, in pursuing a goal, you cannot dictate every outcome, yet you can control your preparation, diligence, and consistency. This principle is simple yet profound. It is a key pillar of Stoic resilience. By concentrating on what is yours to govern, you free your mind from anxiety and distraction. Marcus Aurelius likened the mind to a fortress. You fortify it with rational thought, self-discipline, and acceptance, while letting external noise pass by. Practically, this means practicing detachment from outcomes without abandoning effort, acting rightly without attachment to approval, and choosing patience when faced with the inevitable. Over time, this focus cultivates calmness, clarity, and strength, a mind that remains steady amid uncertainty. This lesson is not just philosophical. It is a practical guide for navigating daily life with grace and reason. A ninth lesson in clear thinking is the value of questioning assumptions. Marcus Aurelius often examined his own beliefs, asking whether they were grounded in reason or merely inherited, habitual, or influenced by others. Our minds are prone to accept ideas without scrutiny, yet unquestioned assumptions can lead to poor judgments, unnecessary fears, and errors in reasoning. For instance, you might assume that success requires constant approval from others, or that a mistake defines your worth. These are not facts, but interpretations that can mislead you. By critically evaluating your thoughts, you separate truth from opinion, fact from fear, and necessity from preference. This practice requires honest self-reflection and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. It also involves humility, recognizing that your current perspective may be limited or flawed. Questioning assumptions is not about doubt for its own sake. It is about clarity and precision. Marcus Aurelius treated his mind like a garden, weeding out false beliefs and cultivating reason, integrity, and perspective. In everyday life, this might look like pausing before reacting, asking yourself why you hold a particular judgment, or considering alternative explanations before concluding. Over time, this habit strengthens discernment, reduces impulsive decisions, and aligns your actions with reality rather than illusion. By continuously examining and refining your assumptions, you create a more rational, resilient mind capable of navigating life with insight and calm. Another lesson from Marcus Aurelius is the power of focusing only on what is within your control. He emphasized that much of human frustration comes from attempting to govern what cannot be governed: other people's actions, the passage of time, or the inevitable twists of fate. Wasting energy on these external forces is futile and only disturbs your peace. Instead, clarity emerges when you concentrate on your own judgments, choices, and responses. This does not mean passivity. It means acting deliberately and effectively where your influence actually matters. Consider a disagreement at work. You cannot control someone else's opinion, but you can control how calmly and rationally you respond. The same principle applies to emotions like anger or fear. You cannot prevent life from presenting challenges, but you can decide whether to react with panic, resentment, or patience. Marcus Aurelius taught that by accepting what is beyond your control and taking responsibility for your own thoughts and actions, you conserve mental energy and cultivate inner stability. This focus allows for measured, reasoned action rather than reactive impulse. It is the foundation of practical wisdom, a mindset that adapts to circumstances without being swayed by them. In practicing this, your attention becomes sharper, your decisions clearer, and your mind more resilient against chaos. Life becomes less a struggle against the world and more a mastery of self, guided by reason and calm discernment. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to examine his thoughts before accepting them as truth. He warned that the mind can easily be deceived by appearances, assumptions, or social pressures. Clear thinking begins with questioning. Is this belief based on fact or on habit, fear, or convenience? By pausing to reflect, you prevent hasty judgments that lead to confusion or conflict. Imagine encountering a rumor that stirs anger or envy. Without careful thought, you might react and escalate the situation. A Stoic approach asks you to step back, observe the evidence, and consider alternative perspectives. This practice trains the mind to separate truth from opinion, reality from interpretation. Marcus wrote about the importance of internal dialogue, a quiet conversation with yourself that checks impulses and clarifies reasoning. It is not overthinking, but deliberate reflection, examining motivations, weighing consequences, and identifying biases. By cultivating this habit, you develop mental clarity and discernment, allowing decisions to be guided by reason rather than emotion. Over time, this vigilance strengthens your ability to remain composed under pressure, respond wisely to challenges, and act in accordance with virtue. It is a skill that shields you from confusion and empowers deliberate action, turning every moment into an opportunity for rational growth. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the discipline of observing the world without judgment, seeing events as they are rather than how we wish them to be. He recognized that clarity comes from accepting facts without letting emotions distort perception. For example, when someone behaves unfairly, our instinct might be anger. Yet Marcus reminds us to ask, does this reaction serve reason? Or is it driven by pride or expectation? By noticing reality as it unfolds, without layering our desires or fears on top, we see the truth more clearly. He encouraged focusing on what is within our control, our thoughts, actions and responses, and letting go of what is not. This approach prevents wasted energy on imagining or resenting circumstances beyond influence. Imagine the calm of a river flowing around rocks. It does not fight the obstacles but adapts smoothly. Similarly, a mind trained in clear thinking flows around challenges rather than being blocked by them. Through daily reflection, journaling, and mindful observation, we can strengthen this skill. Marcus taught that a disciplined mind does not simply react, but evaluates, discerns, and chooses its response wisely. Each moment becomes an exercise in clarity, revealing the difference between perception and truth, impulse and reason, chaos and calm. Marcus Aurelius taught that wisdom is not just knowledge, but the ability to act in accordance with reason consistently. Clear thinking is incomplete if it does not guide action. He urged self-examination. After observing and analyzing events, what decisions do we make? Are they rational, or are they colored by fear, desire, or habit? The Stoic approach involves pausing before responding, questioning assumptions, and considering long-term consequences. For instance, when facing criticism, instead of reacting defensively, one can reflect, is there truth here that I can learn from, or is it irrelevant to my virtue? This mindset reduces impulsive errors and fosters steady judgment. Marcus also highlighted the importance of simplicity in thought. Complexities often cloud perception, creating distractions and unnecessary worry. By stripping away excess and focusing on essential truths, the mind becomes sharper and less susceptible to manipulation or confusion. He compared this to a clear lens, through which the world is neither magnified nor diminished, but seen as it truly is. Through disciplined practice, self-awareness, and a commitment to rationality, one develops a resilient clarity. Each decision becomes an opportunity to exercise reason, to act deliberately rather than react mechanically, and to live in alignment with one's principles. In this way, clear thinking is not an abstract ideal. It is a practical, daily pursuit that shapes character and guides a life of virtue. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that the mind is like a garden. If left untended, weeds of confusion and error will grow. But if cultivated with care, clarity, and insight, flourish. Clear thinking requires constant vigilance, not occasional effort. It involves questioning habitual assumptions, recognizing biases, and separating what is within our control from what is not. He often wrote that external events are indifferent. It is our judgment of them that causes distress or peace. By focusing on reason and virtue, we gain a stable perspective that is less swayed by circumstance. Furthermore, Marcus emphasized the role of patience and reflection. Instant conclusions rarely lead to wisdom, while careful consideration and observation reveal patterns and truths. We must also embrace discomfort and uncertainty as part of the learning process. Clarity is forged in moments of challenge, not ease. Through deliberate practice, we train the mind to weigh evidence, consider alternatives, and act according to reason rather than impulse. This disciplined approach strengthens resilience, allowing us to remain composed even amid chaos. In essence, clear thinking is not a single skill, but a lifelong habit, cultivated through mindful attention, honesty with oneself, and an unwavering commitment to truth and virtue. It transforms not only how we perceive the world, but how we navigate it. If these lessons from Marcus Aurelius helped you see the power of clear thinking, then take the next step and watch the video waiting for you now.